Hello and welcome to another update. In this one, there's been no changes to the front line, so I'll be focusing on the updates posted by Ryber as they have a lot of information I do not use on my updates, so I'll be using that map to present the situation. So currently the situation around Pavlivka is that the Russians have gained control over most of the village, somewhere around this area here, while this upper area here is mostly contested. They claim that some streets the fighting is so heavy that sometimes the Ukrainians gain control of it, and then a few hours later the Russians gain control of it, then the Ukrainians get control of it again. So it's a lot of back and forth fighting, and that is because the Ukrainians set a lot of reinforcements to this front line, which allows them to have enough troops to actually push back the Russians. And at the same time, they claim that resupplying is very difficult because of the weather and the muddy earth, which means that their most supplies are coming from Vuhledar, as Mikilske is pretty close to the front line, and from the western side, there's no road for them to use. So they only have one route of resupply, and because of the fighting within the city, it is difficult for them to reach the front line and actually resupply. So the forces have to pull back to get resupplied and then go front to the front again, which allows the Ukrainians to take advantage of the situation to push the Russians back again. That's for the Pavlivka area. Then further northeast, we see that the Russians are still trying to push through this open field and prevent any Ukrainian forces from pushing back, as it allows them to get fire control over this road and allows them to cut off resupply to Vuhledar. With the capture of Pavlivka in the near future, they'll be able to cut off this road as well, which will leave Vuhledar exposed to attacks from every side and with no retreat option, as any area that isn't a road is very muddy. And this road is also fairly muddy as it is not made of concrete. It is a road made with dirt, sand, and rocks, which makes it difficult to pass through. And this one is a concrete road, which means that it is easy to pass through. Here around Pavlivka, we see that the Ukrainians tried to conduct a counterattack to push back the Russian gains. However, the Russians managed to force back the Ukrainian advance, and they are still continuing and trying to get a foothold in the city itself of Novomikhailivka. Moving on to the Luhansk front, we see that there isn't a lot of fighting, but there's a new stronghold that is being built around Mirkivka, where the Russians are expecting the Ukrainians to initiate a counteroffensive here around Plushenka, as they want to reach this road here and cut off the Russian supplies between Svatove and Kreminna. And they saw that this is the weak point as they have control of Makivka, which means that it's only Plushenka which is between them and fire control of this road, where further south it is more difficult as the Russian forces have these multiple positions on the road, which allows them to hold the line. Further up north, we see that the Ukrainians are conducting a lot of recon here by the front line, and the Russians are using this opportunity to blow a lot of Ukrainian positions, as they're expecting with this recon the Ukrainians will want to try an offensive here by the road, so they're blowing up the positions that the Ukrainians are starting. We also see here in the south as well as in the north that the Ukrainians have pulled artillery and the multiple launch rocket systems to the front line, which means that they're planning an offensive very soon, as they would not pull these further to the front unless they are planning on conducting an offensive further to the east, because if these units have a 15-kilometer range, then they would be able to reach the road. However, because they're so close to the front line, which is here, they are vulnerable. But if the Ukrainians push to the front, we'll have this whole buffer zone between them and the front line, which will allow them to be safe as they bombard the road. So what they're planning to do is to push into this road and cut it off from this northern area and to take control of Pitkuichansk and Kuzimivka, which will leave Svatove undefended from the northwest, and it will also allow them to flank the village of Raihorodka instead of going through this river here to the west, which means that they'll be able to reach this road here and cut off the road between Svatove and Kreminna, and it is the best area to fight through. However, there's this river here going through, which means that they have to pass through the river first. The Russians have blown this bridge that goes through here between Svatove and Kupiansk. This means that they are planning on holding this river line and preventing the Ukrainians from passing through, which is why we see a lot of explosions by the river line as they want to prevent any concentration of Ukrainian forces, which will allow them to push through and get a beachhead. That's it for this update. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.